Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey, my team and I are offering a 3-day intensive retreat in San Diego, California. This retreat is going to be so powerful and transformative. My team and I will show you how to discover yourself, your true potential, and help you find your path and purpose in life and uncover the warrior's courage that is within you. I literally put my heart and soul into this program, and the reason why you want this is because I will save you time and money from having to figure out all of this on your own. There are only 10 spots available for the retreat, so go to kfmretreat.com to learn more and apply for the program. Again, that's kfmretreat.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I am here with Paul Cooper, and from what I know and from what I've heard and from what I've read, he sets people free. So we'll start with that and we'll dive in here. So Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
All right, right on. And Paul, we kickstart off every episode with a favorite success quote of the guest or some sort of saying that they've lived by. So what do you got for us? And then share with us what that means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my favorites, and it's from Adaya Shante is his name. He's a writer, and he's written a couple books. But the quote is, "Time to cash in your chips. Put your ideas and beliefs on the table. See who has the bigger hand, you or the mystery that pervades you. Time to scrape the mind shit off your shoes, undo the laces that hold your prison together, and dangle your toes into emptiness. Once you've put everything on the table, once all of your currency is gone and your pockets are full of air, all you've got left to gamble with is yourself. Go ahead, climb up onto the velvet top of the highest stakes table, place yourself as the bet, look God in the eyes, and finally, for once in your life, lose."
Wow. Yeah, talk about freedom and setting yourself free there.
Yeah, that's it's a beautiful expression of that to me. And life has brought me to my knees over and over and over again. And I feel like I finally learned this lesson, and the way my life has started to unfold from that place has just been really remarkable. And I couldn't be more grateful with how my life is going. And right now I feel like it's really just the beginning, and it's so fun. Yeah. Let's
kind of go back. Let's take us back to where you were. I'm interested in kind of like aha moments. What was your life before you're able to just say, I'm happy where life is and where it's going, and you're on your path and journey. So, take the mic and share with us your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Rwanda, which was such a cool experience. My dad was the head of the business department and head of the computer department on a Christian missionary university in Rwanda. And so as a kid, I just got to go and explore, and we lived on this university. There was 20 missionary families or so. So there was a few other kids my age, but we could just go anywhere on our bikes, and our parents would just basically like be home by dark, and we could go climb dormant volcanoes or go caving in these massive caves that had like pits full of skeletons in them from the genocide in the 60s. And, we could go hunt chameleons or go visit pygmy villages and, hang out with these little tiny people. And it was just such a cool experience to feel so free, and then to have, parents who were actually showing us what unconditional love felt like. And so I spent the first 8.5 years of my life in that environment, growing up, like just feeling so free and so loved. And then when I was 8.5, my family and another family went on a long vacation. We drove all the way down to South Africa and went and saw Victoria Falls and the Cape Horn and all of that, drove all the way back. And the last day of our drive home, we stopped at a gas station because we'd driven over some rocks and like punched a hole in the gas tank. And I remember taking the gas tank out of our family's car, and like we like patched it somehow by like melting plastic over the hole or something, and put it back in, got the car working again. And then I decided to jump in the other family's car. And about 10 minutes down the road, I noticed that our family wasn't behind us. And so I, let the father of the car I was in, I let him know that they weren't behind us. So we pulled over and waited for a little bit. And they didn't come. And so we turned around and headed back to see if they'd broken down or something. And as we were pulling back, there was this big crowd of people, and I saw this red canteen in the middle of the road, and like my heart just sank because that was my brother's canteen, and there had been a car accident. And as we, pulled up to the car through all the people, we arrived at the car, and my father was dead in the front seat. My mom and my brothers were gone, and there was the other vehicle there too that they'd had an accident with. But I got taken from there to a little Catholic clinic that was, a mile down the road or something. And I could hear the screaming before I even got in there. And I went inside, and the first thing I did, I was like, I got to find my mom. And so I went and looked for my mom. And I get to this little back room that's like had a bathtub in it. My mom's in this bathtub, like full of her own blood, and like her legs were cut open. I could see the bones in her legs, and she's kicking and screaming. And so I turned around, and my little brother's over someone's shoulder, and his head is split open, and I could see his skull, and there was, 2 of his toes were torn off, and there was like strings hanging from where his toes used to be. And then I go find my other brother, and he's getting these big pieces of glass pulled out of his forehead. And then the other family that I had been riding with, like they're all crying and kind of melting down. And I just remember being just so peaceful inside and just still. I wasn't worried and I wasn't scared. I knew everything was going to be okay. And it was all just really surreal. It was super vivid. But ever since that point, I've seen the world differently. Like I experienced a massive awakening in that moment on one level, but then on another level, I got very, very separated and detached from my human experience. And so myself and my youngest brother, or my middle brother, we got sent to South Carolina to my mom's brother's house. My mom and my youngest brother got airlifted to Brussels. And then we got reunited a few months later when they got transferred to a hospital in the US. And once my mom got out of the hospital and was able to take care of us, we moved to Southwest Michigan, and she went back to school. And they just kind of thought I was okay because I hadn't been in the car accident. And so it was a really interesting experience trying to adapt to a different culture without any guidance, and to relate to my family who were clearly traumatized, and as was I in a way, but I could always see things very clearly. And I remember realizing quickly that I was going to have to build a persona in order to relate to these new people. And so I remember, picking the qualities that I wanted from different people and then modeling those qualities and building like this persona that I was going to use to adapt to the world. And then that worked fairly well. I remember not wanting to get too much attention, but not, by either being like too successful, but also not wanting to get too much attention by, just chronically failing. So I, built this persona that got me kind of like, mostly B's and a few A's and a few C's here and there. And um, it was a really interesting experience. And then as time went on and just kind of like sank into being in the US and so forth, my mom ended up getting her PhD in psychology. She got remarried. My stepdad's amazing. And, you know, I have 3 stepbrothers and a stepsister that came with the step family as well. And that was challenging to adapt to that scenario. And I wound up finding myself in a place where I was very reactive and like easily triggered by my environment. And on one level, especially at home, but out in the rest of the world, I was very self-aware, and I was very aware of what was going on around me, and constantly, you know, like testing myself and pushing myself. I remember noticing that, you know, as I, you know, turned 15 and 16, I noticed that it was like kind of uncomfortable talking to girls. And so every time I would travel, and I was in a place where I knew I would never see the people again, I would just make myself go like talk to 5 girls in the airport on my layover or something. Or if I was at an amusement park, I would just go up to them and say anything I could think of, like, you know, what time it is it, or you look really nice or something, just to kind of move myself through that fear. And then I put myself through, you know, a number of experiences like that. And I could always feel everything. And so I was always kind of in this place where I was torn between what I was feeling and what my mind thought I was supposed to be doing. And the two never really seemed to line up. And when I left home, when I was like 18, I went down to college with my stepbrother. And at that point, the persona was like, it was starting to fail. Like it wasn't working anymore. And I was collapsing under the pressure, and it was hard for me to stay focused in school. And so I ended up playing a lot of video games, and then starting to smoke weed, and just kind of lost my motivation to go to school, and ended up dropping out and getting a job at a restaurant. Now that I was out of a place where I wasn't having to take care of my mom emotionally anymore or anything, at least not directly, because I wasn't living near her. I just stopped trying to be anything or trying to be anyone that I thought I was supposed to be. And I just like let myself go wherever life took me. And I found myself in this just really chaotic world of drugs and dysfunction, and ended up marrying someone really young. I got married when I was like 21 to a woman who had done a lot more drugs than I had at that point. And we ended up, you know, in this marriage of 8.5 years, you know, which was, I learned so much from it, but most of the time it was pretty chaotic and pretty dysfunctional. I learned a lot about myself through that experience. But when that marriage finally ended, near the end of the marriage, I had this sense that I wasn't always going to be this way. And that's why I was just kind of okay. I was like, okay, but it's time to learn. It's time to start growing. And I wanted to do that with my wife. And when I would try and talk to her about it, there was a fair amount of resistance that came from that. And so I just decided, I was like, well, I'm just going to start, you know, reading and learning and starting to change, and hopefully she'll just follow suit. And I remember going to Barnes and Nobles because I was looking for a book about success. And yeah, I knew it had an orange cover, but I'd forgotten exactly what the title was. And it was interesting because instead of finding that book about success, I found A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, which is a bright orange book written by Eckhart Tolle. And I read that and tried to get my wife to read it, and she just basically said it was new age bullshit and she wasn't going to deal with it. And so I read that, and it was cool because it was really written from a place that the observer part of me already kind of understood. So it just validated a lot of what I was experiencing. And so as I started to change, we started to fight more. And one day I went to work and I got home and her and all of her stuff was gone. And part of me was like super relieved when I got home. And I didn't hear from her for like a week after that. And when I finally did hear from her, she basically said that she had done it to try and save our marriage, and she wanted me to let her come back. And we'd been having a lot of problems, and I didn't think that was going to be the solution to the problem. So I decided to, lovingly stand my ground, and I just, encouraged her to get her own place. And so later, what I realized was that the human part of me had experienced a lot of pain. And so when I just stopped trying to be anything, like all of that pain started to bleed out into my life. And I started creating experiences that would validate that pain. And so I started creating all of these painful experiences. And it's taken me a while since then to really feel through and to really come back into the human part of me and feel through all of the pain that I experienced and bring it back up. And, after my wife and I separated, I fell in love with another woman, and then the relationship deteriorated in a similar way that my relationship with my wife did, except it happened much faster. And so I realized at that point that I was the common denominator in that.
Right.
And so that's what woke me up to, a much deeper level of responsibility when it comes to the circumstances that I'm being faced with in my life.
What did you find? Like, what was that common denominator?
Well, just who I was being. Like, I was, the emotional state that I was living in was causing me to act and interact with them in such a way, and the parts of me that was, afraid of being abandoned and always needing certain responses from the woman in my life was causing me to act in ways that were inauthentic to me and that were causing pain, and not only in their lives but in my life as well. And so I realized then, like, really a pivotal moment with that woman that I fell in love with after getting married. A pivotal moment was when she told me, like, I was upset at her for something. I think she snuck out and, like, she told me she was going somewhere but ended up going to visit her ex-boyfriend or something. And I got upset about it. And I felt fully justified in being upset. But she just looked at me and told me, she was like, it's not my job to do anything different so that you feel better. It's your job to figure out how to feel better no matter what I'm doing. And I was like, you got to be kidding me when I first heard it. But then right afterwards it hit me. I was like, man, she's right. And so in that moment, I got a glimpse of what full responsibility felt like, or like what it looked like. And I saw the gap that I needed to close. And so then I went about closing that gap. And so I started actually engaging the painful experiences instead of trying to avoid them. And that led me to move into my mom's basement for 13 months. And basically with the intention to have her trigger me until there was no more triggers left. And I just felt through all of the emotions of all of these triggers that were coming up between me and my mom. And I saw myself act out and get upset at my mom and say things that, were just really hurtful. And my mom did some of the same. Like when we'd push each other and one of us would blow, then, all of this venom would come out. And instead of trying to protect myself from it, I would just open myself and feel it and feel like as much pain was available to me in those experiences and in those blow-ups. And after 13 months, it got to a place where there was really nothing that my mom could do or say that could trigger me. And like another thing that I would do is, like, at that point, I still didn't really know what I was doing with my life. I didn't know what my purpose was, and I didn't know how to think about it without thinking about how much money I was going to make or something. And so I decided that I wouldn't ever do anything for money again that I wouldn't be willing to do for free anyway. And I figured that if I did that, then whatever my natural gift was would be drawn out of me, and that I would have to move through whatever emotional thresholds were standing between me and my full authentic expression. And so we got to a place where after 13 months, my mom basically told me, she was like, Paul, my life is good. My life is basically perfect, except you live in my basement and you're ruining it. And at that point, I knew it was like it was time for me to leave. And so
how old were you at this point, and why did you choose to live at your mother's basement for 13 months?
Well, I was 30 years old at this point, and I knew that the subconscious patterns that were running my life kind of outside of my awareness and were driving a lot of my behaviors. I knew that those patterns were patterns that I had developed in my relationship with my mom. And they were based on how I had interpreted my interactions with my mom. And so I figured that if I went back there and let her trigger me, then I could get access to those patterns. And I didn't know how else to kind of uncover that stuff and free myself from it. And I wasn't willing to be run by those things anymore.
Okay. And so, yeah, go ahead. Like, what happens next? You move out, and then, walk us through the next step here.
Yeah. And so when I left with a backpack with like 4 changes of clothes and my laptop. And I had like a little bit of a Facebook following at that point because I had been sharing my experience while I was living at home and just like sharing insights that were coming as I was moving through my process. And so I had a little bit of a Facebook following, but I just went out I caught a bus to Nashville to go stay with a woman that I'd met on Facebook. And, she was suffering from some chronic pain and so forth. So I went down there to see if I could help her. And I was just basically following the signs that the universe was giving me and living by these new terms of basically being relentlessly authentic, taking full responsibility for everything that comes to me in my reality, and not doing anything for money that I wouldn't be willing to do for free anyway. And for a little while, my stepdad sent me like $500 a month to eat because he didn't know how I was going to eat or how I was going to survive. And after a couple months, I told him I needed him to stop sending me that as well, because I needed to figure it out on my own. And I still at that point didn't know where I was going to get money or how I was going to support myself. I just was, kind of operating on blind faith. And I just kept doing that, and just, one situation after another would come up, and, these little openings and opportunities would come, and I would just, step through it. And I just kept showing up for the people that came into my experience and offering my insights. And so as I just kind of ended up coaching people would come to me with their problems, and I would, help them through them and help them understand them. And I just kept doing it until I got better and better at it. And then at one point I just posted on Facebook, I was like, okay, I'm ready to take like an actual client. and that's how I got my first client. And since then, it's just been something that's been slowly building. And so I started from absolutely nothing, living from a place of full responsibility and just pure intention, on faith that, from that intention, the mechanisms that I needed to put the areas of my life into play and get them working would emerge at the right times and in the right ways. And that was like 3 years ago. And since then, like, the experience I'm having of life has been miraculous. And, the sharing what I've been doing or sharing my viewpoints and sharing what I've learned through my experiences with people. Since then, it's been so amazing to watch the impact that it has on their lives as well. So it's just really cool.
Yeah, it sounds like, now you're coming full circle here. It's like you've gone through some shit, let's just say, right? And, in that process, you're slowly helping people and kind of building a following by kind of sharing some of the, things that you're learning, insights that you're learning. And now for the last, it sounds like 3 years or so, you've been coaching people on how to set people free.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just really cool to see that transformation and to hear you say, like, I'm living, an extraordinary, I'm living a great life, and you're happy. Mm-hmm. And so how do you live a life of joy and freedom?
How do I live that?
I
realized because I saw in the lives of the people around me, I realized that nothing I could achieve, like having a business or having a career or having a perfect girlfriend, none of those things were going to make me happy. And so my first order of business was to figure out how to be happy independent of what was going on around me. And in order to do that, I had to basically energetically and emotionally free myself from my circumstances. I had to figure out how to stop blaming my circumstances for how I was feeling. And once I did that, then I got to a space where I could start to choose how I felt. And so from a place of choosing how I feel and returning to that choice over and over again, then the life that I want, even better than I could have imagined, is emerging around me. And so it's such a cool thing. Like, now I have this visualization that I do where I take myself, like, through this portal in my heart into, like, another reality where humanity is this organism that's symbiotic with Mother Earth, and they collect all of their energy from the sun, and there's no war, no hunger. Poverty is a thing of the past, and everyone's fully actualizing, and creativity is happening everywhere for creativity's sake. And the whole planet is, like, drenched in unconditional love. And I take myself there and use my imagination to generate a felt state in my body that matches that reality. And then I bring that into this reality and emanate that basically through my body into my world all the time. And that's the intention I live by. I let that define who I am and how I be in the world. And then the life I want is a natural byproduct of being that person.
What did you mean by where everyone is fully self-actualizing?
Well, I mean, by imagining a reality where scarcity isn't a thing anymore, and no one's value is up for negotiation anymore, and everyone has the resources and connections to really pursue whatever passions or creativity bring them to life, then, basically I'm imagining a planet where, if you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, all of the four like basic levels of needs are already met. And so then all that's left to do is to fully express yourself. And so I'm imagining a planet where everyone is engaged in the activity of full self-expression instead of survival.
This is definitely some, outside of the box thinking. So what I'm getting from you is that you've completely stepped outside of traditional thinking of what the society says that you should do. How do you go about unlearning what society has taught you or put on you for decades and moving out of the past and or like stepping out of things that kind of like entrap you?
Yeah, so basically what I do is anytime I feel any kind of contracted emotion of fear or pain or anything I would consider unpleasant, I engage it consciously and invite it to make me feel as bad as it possibly can. And so if it's pain, it's like, how much pain can I feel from this? Or if it's fear, how scared can I get from this? And I just feel everything fully. And when I do that, it passes through quite quickly. And then I can return to just what I consider my natural state of peace and joy and unconditional love. And so I don't do anything to mood alter. So I won't even go exercise to make myself feel better. I'll figure out how to feel better before I go exercise. Or I don't have any mechanisms in my world set up to avoid negative feelings. And so when I started to engage my reality as a whole that way, my ego didn't have anything to like taunt me with or to like scare me with. And so I rarely experience negative feelings anymore.
Okay. And now that you're in this place where you're not experiencing negative feelings and you're helping guys do this, like if I was a client and I was just kind of stuck in life, like how do you help guys get unstuck in life? Because it's common. Like you can get stuck doing the same thing over and over, and you try and make a leap. You try and read some books. Maybe you attend a live event. You do something, but like you just feel like you're stuck in this same place and you can't break through.
Right. Well, basically what I would do is I'll question them about what it is that's making them feel stuck, and I'll just go down the rabbit hole with them. So I'll be asking them what their stories are about why they're stuck. And instead of invalidating their stories and telling them to like drop their stories and let them go, what I do is I just listen to their stories and feel like the emotional experience that comes with their stories, and I'll feel it with them. And so in a sense, I'm using my heart to show them how to feel their way through their own stories. And, one at a time, we unhook them from the stories that are keeping them stuck. And then I invite them into a reality with a lot more possibilities. And then I also teach them the mental frameworks that I use in order to be able to stay in that elevated state. And I, take them through visualization so that they can actually get a glimpse of what that feels like. And then, over time, and not even a whole lot of time, usually I work with my clients for, a month or two, and it doesn't take a lot of time, but in that short period of time, I basically, untangle them from the stories that are holding them back, and then invite them into a realm of possibility where they can basically write whatever story they want.
Well, so being like this helps free them basically.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's the stories that we've written in relation to our experiences that hold us back. There's always, if you're stuck, there's always an I can't because. And so I'll just go explore that with them until I find like the hook that's hooking them in, and then I'll help them unhook it. And so it's basically like we just go in to their psyche and unlock the chains that are holding them back, and then set them free from it, and then give them the frameworks that they need not to put the chains back on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, in your experience with like helping out these guys or, people, men and women, what have you seen as really slowing people down and it keeps them from living and getting the things that they want in life?
Well, in most cases, people have a story about something outside of them holding them back and keeping them from the life that they want. And a lot of it, to be honest, a lot of what people come to me for initially is a relationship scenario that they can't figure out. Usually they feel like super attracted to somebody, but their brain is telling them that it doesn't work. And so they're in this relationship dynamic that's causing them a ton of pain. And so they'll come to me for that. And then we use that as the entry point and go in and start to unlock everything. And so a lot of it too has to do with teaching people how to fall in love, not only with another person, but basically with life itself, and teaching them how to cope with the kind of like psychosis that comes with being in love, because love doesn't lend very well to rational thinking. And so a lot of people get really scared when they start to fall in love, and that's why they get scared in relationships and like either push people away or get really clingy or whatever they do. Everybody does something different. But when you start to fall in love and that love energy starts to move through you, then your rational thinking doesn't have the same grip that it used to have. And so that's really destabilizing for a lot of people. And, basically I'm living in a place where I'm in love with life itself, and I just stay there. And so I don't have to be rational.
Yeah. What does that feel like to just be in love with life? What does that feel like for you? If you can elaborate.
I mean, it just feels like effortless in a lot of ways. Like I don't do anything that I have to, I don't have to try, or I don't do any trying or efforting. Everything feels just kind of in flow and serendipitous. And, so like a lot of times I'll just lay around like a big cat and breathe. And I make this humming sound with my voice and like just feel my body. And then, there's always like cool opportunities opening up and, and new experiences happening. And it's just really fun. I just get to live my life basically like a kid. I figured out how to live life the way I did when I was a kid in Africa. Like I just get to go and explore and like just play. And I don't feel like pressurized all the time.
Yeah, this sounds really freeing. How would you explain this to someone who has a lot of responsibility? That they have a corporate job, maybe they're married, maybe they have children. How can they incorporate some of this thinking into their lifestyle, which seems very structured and very, I guess you could say, quote unquote, like living by society's norms?
This way of thinking actually, and this way of being, it's actually extremely adaptable. What I found when I engage people that have a lot of responsibilities in place, or they've built something in their lives that they've built it from a place of like obligation or responsibility or like a lot of efforting and discipline. Once they start to take these concepts into play, I'm able to just free them up without destroying the world that they've created. And usually what happens is that love, that kind of loving energy starts to flow into everything that they've always created, and it just starts to get better. It doesn't have to all crumble. They can just basically put down all the burden they've been carrying, and they can still have the things that they have.
Yeah. This has been a very freeing episode, giving a lot of advice on how to really become more of yourself and kind of live and like liberate yourself from things that have been holding you back. Like you're talking about chains, like, you know, breaking the chains that have been causing people pain.
Right.
Yeah, this has been good. Let's now jump into the knowledge round. So I'm just going to ask you some rapid fire questions here, just shorter answers on your end, and we'll just brush through some of these questions here. So are you ready for the knowledge round, Paul?
Let's do it.
All right.
Someday I'll go after my dreams. Someday I'll take action. Wouldn't the world be a better place if we were all inspired? If the world wasn't full of uninspiring people? We're all taught that life is tough. Life is hard. But the awful truth is that life is easy. It's pretty easy to live and do just enough. But truly living, chasing your dreams is hard. What are you dying to do? What is it that lights a fire in your heart? Don't wait till someday to answer this question. There is nothing more important than figuring that out. We're all dying, but if you're not chasing your dream, then you're already dead. Guys, go to kfmretreat.com to apply for my retreat that will change everything. Go to kfmretreat.com to apply and be part of a program that will be a catalyst for redefining your life.
Welcome to the knowledge round, where the guests will be asked rapid fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. The first question I have for you, Paul, is what advice would you give to someone who's feeling completely lost and unsure of their purpose in life?
See how lost you can feel. Just sit in the feeling of being lost. Like, what if you never knew what your purpose was? And just let that feeling, just lay on your bed, let that feeling swallow you up. I know it's going to feel like you think you're going to die, but just let it swallow you up, and you'll feel like you're going in and out of consciousness a little bit, and then you'll pop through and you'll realize, like, oh, I'm still here and everything's fine.
So make it so bad and then kind of come back to reality.
Yeah.
All right. And what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
What was holding me back?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, I had, like, before I felt through all the pain, like, I didn't used to be able to tell that story, my initial story, without just breaking into tears. And I wouldn't be able to tell it with the amount of clarity that I've told it now. And so I was storing all this pain from that experience that I bypassed in the experience as like a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
So I had all this pain in place. And so the stories that I built and the way I was seeing the world was constructed in such a way to avoid pain. Because anytime I would get pressurized, I would get put back in touch with that pain. So I had a set of stories that were super limiting because I was always trying to avoid pain. And so that prevents me taking any risks. It prevents me, having the tough conversations I need to have. It prevents me from taking a stand on the things that I need to take a stand on because I was scared of the pain that I just hadn't faced yet.
Yeah. I think it's a common thing. And you said coping, we do certain things as coping mechanisms and then we store that pain inside of us. And then it sits inside of us for years and years and almost, can grow into something and blow up at a certain point in our lives. And so I think that's very powerful. I think that's very strong. Now, on your journey, of course, you're reading a ton, you're, reaching out to people, meeting a lot of people. And so can you name a person who maybe has played a mentor role in your life who's helped you on your journey, and why and how has this person impacted your life?
Man, that's interesting because when it comes to like a mentor, the only really one thing that I ever did, I took an 11-day trip to Bali where it was like a journey to discover your life's purpose. And that was run by a gentleman named Kute Blackson, and it was called Boundless Bliss. And I learned a lot from him during experience. But aside from that, I haven't had anyone mentoring me, and I've maybe read like 6 or 7 books. But once I got a glimpse of full responsibility, and I was able to tap into that part of me that was able to just observe from a pure consciousness place, then basically I've figured this out largely on my own, just by like slamming myself up against every wall I could find until it broke.
Yeah. And are you guys still in contact?
I ran into him when he was out here for Success 3.0, and we said hi to each other, but we don't really have like an ongoing relationship.
Yeah. Just based on this last few questions, it sounds like you're doing a lot of events and like self-education. Like how often do you do this, and like what role has this played in your development?
I mean, I just recently did one event, and then like I've gone to like 3 conferences total ever, and then that one thing thing in Bali. But aside from that, I haven't really spent any time in the self-development world. Like that's all kind of like a new world to me. I've just kind of popped into it here in the last 2 or 3 years, and I've got another one planned that I'm going to go to soon. But it's I haven't led any. I've gone to a few, but I don't really spend a whole lot of time in that space. Like one of the things that I knew really young was that I wasn't supposed to like read any spiritual text or learn from anybody else until I figured it out on my own. And now that I've kind of had this visceral experience of who I actually am, now I go out, now I'm starting to delve into the world of like seeing what else is out there and what kind of language other people are speaking.
Yeah, I think there's a good lesson for some people out there too. It's like sometimes you got to just put the book down,
yeah,
and just like really do some self-reflection on yourself, and maybe stop searching for the answers and just start looking, stop looking outward and then start looking inward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, our realities are so responsive. They are always giving us a tremendous amount of feedback. And like, if there's some person that drives you nuts, engage that relationship and just feel through all of the negative feelings that come up from it until that person can't drive you nuts anymore. And then you are like no longer a candidate to be, tormented by them, and there's always like a spot in your reality that's causing like some kind of contraction. And if you just like put down all the books and all the seminars and just really take stock of what feedback your reality is giving you, and stop running away from your current situation, then your reality is going to show you exactly what you need to learn.
Yeah, it's almost as if like our reality, the challenge in front of us is the exact challenge that we're supposed to experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've said like, a challenge to you might not be a challenge to me, and vice versa. And It's like the reason why it's a challenge is because we haven't learned that lesson yet. But someone else has, and they would be, oh, I do that all. That's easy. Waking up early, I do that all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just challenges are there for a reason, and that to me was a big epiphany. I was like, whoa, like everyone has their own unique set of challenges, and they're all different because that's what we're supposed to have in order for us to grow and move on and adapt.
Well, and I also knew that at some point, life wasn't ever going to stop giving me opportunities to grow. And so I needed to get away from the idea that once I had overcome a certain set of challenges, then things were going to be okay. And I just needed to figure out how to be okay, and then go engage the challenges from that place. And so my life is still, constantly presenting me with new challenges and new experiences and new things to dive into and to learn and to grow and to expand. And I'm really enjoying that process. but I don't have any illusion that any of that is going to make me more worthy or make me okay somehow.
Right. So really enjoying and living in the present moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just cool. Like, this is where I'm at. Now I'm going to walk over here, see what I can do there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Here's a scenario for you, Paul. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
Man, with my 20-year-old self. Man, I'd probably just give him a hug and say, you know who you are, and just like let him do exactly what he did.
He'd probably just be like, whoa, who was that guy?
Yeah.
All right. We'll take it there. And kind of like suggesting that the lessons and the challenges, I guess what we talked about earlier, like they're going to happen and you need to go through those.
Yeah, like I wouldn't try and steer him away from any of them. Like I don't have any regrets about anything that's happened so far. And so as challenging as they may have been, like I think my 20-year-old self was kind of in a place where he had forgotten who he was. And so, but he was still on the path that he was on, And so I just would want him to remember, like you already know who you are.
Yeah, I like that. And now just kind of reflecting back on your life to where you were, maybe in Michigan and starting at that point, and to where you were now with this newfound sense of clarity and purpose. What would you say is your philosophy on like life and success?
Basically, it's to give yourself permission to dream bigger than you imagine is possible. And which is basically my imagination of that healed planet. Give yourself permission to dream that big and to let yourself feel in your body as if that dream is true, and hold that with one awareness, and then with your other awareness, because we all have the ability to hold like a dual awareness. And then with the other awareness, it's just to always surrender more to the experience that's being offered to you. And then your emotions become like this rubber band that pull those two together, like that dream that you're holding and that beautiful thing that part of you doesn't even want you to entertain the thought of it because it's so scary. But then just surrendering and coming into full acceptance of what is, and then just following the signs and moving with life, and just feeling everything that comes up, and your life will inevitably move toward that dream.
Wow, I like that. All right, that's going to conclude the knowledge on there. That was a very powerful way to kind of conclude there. So now just kind of looking, bringing it back to this moment, what's exciting you today? Like what's getting you out of the bed in the morning?
Right now, what's exciting me the most is I just finally feel like the momentum of my work in the world and so forth is reaching kind of this tipping point that I felt coming, and it's just now starting to happen. And so it's really a cool, exciting time for me. So I spent a lot of time of just being really still and not doing anything for money that I wouldn't do for free, and just showing up, and but there was a lot of I wasn't feeling any kind of the pressure to be, precise and efficient and to be busy well. And I wasn't willing to just fill my time for the sake of filling my time. And so now I'm getting busy enough that things like precision and efficiency and planning and how to be busy well, like all of those things are starting to have value for me now. And so I'm getting to learn how to do all of those things from a place that's really authentic, instead of feeling that I have to, because I'm so excited, the clients that I have and the work that I'm doing. And so figuring out how to wake up and get through and have the energy that I need to make it through the day, to show up for all of them, and to take care of the self-care and all of those things, and how to bring all of those parts of my life into one kind of effortless flow as I get busier and I'm taking on more responsibility is really exciting for me.
Yeah. Wow. I could feel the, just through the tone of your voice, it's like you're really loving what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's awesome. I love seeing that transition, that 180, and I'm excited for you too, and like where you're going to go. So, Paul, go ahead and give yourself a plug on how the audience can follow up with you moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. My website is iampaulcooper.com, and you can schedule an introductory coaching conversation. It's like 45 minutes, and where we just drop in and see where you're at, and I'll kind of give you a little bit more about me, and then that opens a conversation to see what coaching looks like if someone's interested in that. Currently, I just do one-on-one, and there's a blog on there. I don't really put a ton of. The website's more just a portal to get a hold of me. I'm really focusing on getting my practice filled and doing my one-on-one thing. So I haven't spent much time on web content or really doing anything with that so far yet. But there is a website there, and that's the best way to get a hold of me. Otherwise, if you want to just direct email me, it's pjacooper@gmail.com. And then there's Facebook as well.
All right, Paul, thank you so much for being on the show. And again, being vulnerable, extremely vulnerable, and sharing, your story from the past and like what's really going on and how you overcame that. And so that's been invaluable for my listeners and myself. So thank you, Paul.
I really appreciate you having me on here.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.